Have you ever heard of cities so infamous that their very names became symbols of sin and wickedness? Sodom and Gomorrah, once thriving hubs of life and prosperity, are now forever linked to corruption, immorality, and divine judgment. Beneath their bustling streets and lively marketplaces lay a darkness so profound that it provoked an unprecedented act of destruction. But what really happened to these cities? And why did their fate take such a fiery turn? In this story, we're going to peel back the layers of history and scripture to uncover the mystery of Sodom and Gomorrah. We'll explore the sins that led to their downfall and answer some burning questions. Was their destruction solely due to one sin, or was there more to it? What lessons can we learn from their fate? By the end of this episode, you'll not only know the answers but also gain insight into a story that still carries profound meaning today. Let's start at the beginning. Sodom and Gomorrah, as described in the book of Genesis, were situated in the lush and fertile plains near the Dead Sea. Their beauty and abundance made them prime locations for trade and settlement. On the surface, these cities had everything: wealth, culture, and community. But beneath this facade of prosperity, their moral fabric was rotting away. Genesis 13 tells us that when Abraham and his nephew Lot parted ways, Lot chose to settle near Sodom because the land was fertile and well-watered, like the garden of the Lord. At the time, Lot might not have realized just how morally corrupt his new neighbors were. But as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that Sodom and Gomorrah's reputation for wickedness wasn't just hearsay, it was earned. Genesis 18 verse 20 reveals that God had heard a great outcry against the cities, their sins so grievous that they couldn't be ignored. To investigate, God sent 2 angels to Sodom. Their arrival marked the beginning of the city's end. Before the angels reached Sodom, Abraham had an extraordinary conversation with God. Knowing the cities were destined for destruction, Abraham pleaded for their salvation. He asked, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" Then, in a series of bold negotiations, Abraham persuaded God to spare the cities if even 50 righteous people could be found there. When it became clear there weren't 50, Abraham bargained the number down: 45, 40, 30, 20, and finally, just 10. Surely, Abraham thought, there must be at least 10 good people in Sodom and Gomorrah. But tragically, even that small number didn't exist. The cities had descended into complete moral decay, leaving God no choice but to follow through with judgment. When the 2 angels entered Sodom, they were greeted by Lot, who was sitting at the city gates. This was a significant detail. Sitting at the gates was a position often reserved for elders or leaders. It suggests that Lot held some status in the community, despite the city's wickedness. Lot invited the angels to stay at his home, insisting they avoid spending the night in the open square. His insistence was likely due to Sodom's reputation for lawlessness, especially at night. What happened next was chilling. A mob of men from the city, young and old, surrounded Lot's house, demanding that he hand over the visitors so they could abuse them. Lot, desperate to protect his guests, went outside to reason with the mob. In a shocking and heartbreaking move, he even offered his virgin daughters to the men instead. This act might seem incomprehensible to us today, but in Lot's time, protecting guests under one's roof was a sacred duty. Even so, Lot's decision highlights just how desperate and morally compromised the situation had become. The mob refused Lot's offer, growing more violent and threatening to break down the door. At this point, the angels intervened, striking the mob with blindness. This divine act not only protected Lot and his family but also demonstrated the angels' authority and the seriousness of the situation. Before dawn, the angels urged Lot to take his family and flee the city. "Arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city," they warned. Even then, Lot hesitated, and the angels had to physically lead him, his wife, and his daughters out of Sodom. As they fled, the angels gave one strict command: do not look back. This was more than a physical instruction, it was a spiritual one. Looking back symbolized longing for the sinful past, a refusal to let go of what God had condemned. Tragically, Lot's wife disobeyed. As she looked back toward Sodom, she was turned into a pillar of salt. Her fate serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of disobedience and divided loyalty. Once Lot and his remaining family were safely away, the judgment came. Fire and brimstone rained down from the heavens, consuming everything, homes, people, and even the land itself. What was once lush and fertile became a desolate wasteland. The Bible outlines several key sins that led to the city's destruction. Extreme wickedness. Genesis 18 verse 20 speaks of the city's grave sins, which caused great suffering among their inhabitants and those around them. Idolatry. Though not explicitly mentioned in Genesis, idolatry and the worship of false gods were likely prevalent. Jeremiah 23 verse 14 compares Sodom's moral corruption to that of a decayed Jerusalem. Sexual immorality. The mob's actions highlight a culture of unchecked sexual violence and perversion. Jude 1 verse 7 emphasizes that the cities indulged in immorality and strange flesh. Pride and selfishness. Ezekiel 16 verses 49 to 50 reveals that Sodom's people were arrogant, overindulgent, and neglectful of the poor. Their wealth bred complacency and a lack of compassion. Reveling in sin. Perhaps the most damning sin was their pride in wrongdoing. Isaiah 3 verse 9 describes their open defiance of God, showing no shame or remorse. While some consider the story of Sodom and Gomorrah allegorical, archaeological evidence suggests it may have historical roots. Sites near the Dead Sea, like Tal el-Hammam, show signs of a catastrophic event around 1650 BCE. Researchers have discovered ash layers, melted pottery, and sulfur deposits, clues that align with the biblical account of fire raining from the sky. This evidence, coupled with the region's salt flats and sulfur-rich terrain, paints a vivid picture of a once thriving area reduced to rubble. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah isn't just about judgment, it's about choices. It reminds us of the consequences of unchecked sin, pride, and selfishness. It also emphasizes the importance of compassion, humility, and obedience to God. Thank you for joining me on this journey to uncover the mysteries of Sodom and Gomorrah. If you found this story insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that dive deep into biblical history and their lessons for today. Let's learn from the past and choose a better path for the future. What lessons do you take from this story? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, choose wisely.